This is Neha Tulsyan from Crescent Creation. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. For today's video, I've created this very fun interactive card using few new and old products from Lawn Fawn. So let's get started. I have an A4 size accent opaque cardstock in 110 lbs and I am tracing around the Magic Picture Changer die from Lawn Fawn. Make sure you also trace the inside rectangle. This will help us line up the die later for die cutting. Here I'm also tracing around the other die from the same die set. These two die sets together create the Magic Picture interactive element. And now that I know where my dies will cut, I can go ahead and stamp the images to create my scene. For my first scene, I'm using the bunny and the fox image from the Scootin By Stamp set. And I'm using the jellyfish ink from Lawn Fawn to stamp all my images today. I'm stamping the images in such a way that not the full image will show inside the rectangle. So it will look like they're running from far towards each other and hugging each other. So here I just stamped the fox image. Now I'll go ahead and use my eraser to erase all the inside pencil lines so that I can work on my scene. Here off camera, I have cut out two masks for the bunny and the fox using my full post-it notes. Now I'll go ahead and create the scene around them. To create the grass, I'm using the Grassy Stencil from Lawn Fawn, lining the stencil here and taping it down to make sure it doesn't move while inking. And I'm using cracked pistachio and Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink to ink up the grass. I started inking with cracked pistachio first, and then I'll come in with Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink and just ink up the tips of the grass. Since both my colors are from the same color family, I'm using just one blending brush here, and I'll just use my dry paper towel to clean the brush once I'm done. I didn't want my top part of the scene to look completely white, so I thought I'll just go ahead and ink it up with some blue color. And for that, I need to first cut the masks completely. So off camera, I went ahead and cut the top part of the bunny and the fox mask. And I'm using the Grassy Stencil to mask away the grass border. And now I'm inking the sky using Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink. Removing the mask to reveal the scene. And I realized I missed a spot just on top of the fox while inking the sky. So I trimmed the fox mask near his ears a little more better. Placed the mask back in place and inked up that area. Now I'll go ahead and work on the second scene where both these critters are hugging each other, and this image is from the Happy Hug stamp set. Again, using my jellyfish ink to stamp the image. Sorry about my head here, I just wanted to make sure the image is straight. Placing the mask that I created off camera, this time making sure that I cut the mask completely so that I didn't have to cut it in between while I'm creating the scene. And now I'm just repeating the steps and creating the grass using my Grassy Stencil and cracked pistachio and Lucky Clover Distress Oxide inks. Once that's done, I'll go ahead and use my Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink and ink up the sky. Making sure I first masked away the grassy border I just created using the Grassy Stencil. And I'm done inking, and this is how it looks once the masks are all removed. And now I'll go ahead and use my Copic markers to color these images. Since I used jellyfish ink, which is a very light ink, I'll get a no line coloring effect here while coloring with my Copic markers. To color the bunny, I'm using some cool gray markers. All the colors used are listed on the bottom of the screen, and I list them from dark to light. Today I have kept the coloring video fairly slow than what I usually do because I wanted you to follow the video properly. I have got a lot of requests lately to show some no-line coloring videos. So I'm going to go ahead and put some music for you to enjoy the coloring process. Once done coloring, I'll go ahead and line up my Magic Picture Changer die, making sure it's lined up with the pencil marks, and I'll tape it and pass it through my die cutting machine. So here I have my first part of the interactive element done. Now I'll go ahead and color the next scene. I'm using the same Copic markers as I did earlier, and I'm gonna go ahead and add some music again for you to enjoy this coloring. Once I'm done coloring this scene, I'll go ahead and use my second die and line it up with the pencil marks, tape it down and pass it through my die cutting machine. Now I'll take the first die cut, the longer piece, and go ahead and fold the sides that's already been scored by the die. Since I used a heavyweight cardstock here, I was having a little bit of hard time folding these tabs. But I always prefer to use heavyweight cardstock with mechanisms like this because they're gonna get pulled in and out quite a lot, and heavyweight cardstock gives them more sturdiness. Once I'm done using my bone folder, I'll go ahead and add 1/8 inch double-sided tape on these tabs. I'm going to add the tape on the front and the back of both the tabs. You want to use a strong double-sided tape here, and please do not use liquid glue. You do not want any glue oozing out. How much ever careful we are, sometimes liquid glue does ooze out. So it's safe to use double-sided tape here. Once done with the tape, I'll first go ahead and work at the back. So here I'm gonna go ahead and remove the backing of the tape and fold the tabs to glue them shut. Next I'll use my anti-static powder tool here and apply the powder for smooth movement. And now I'll take my other die cut and just pass it through the top of the first die cut. And now I'll just go ahead and feed the tabs from the front die cut to the back one. So you just have to line up both the die cuts and put the 4 front tabs into the back one. Once done, I'm checking if my mechanism is working, and yes, it is. Now I just have to glue this mechanism shut, and for that I want to make sure that my back die cut is straight. Adding a little bit of more powder from the anti-static powder tool, removing the backing of the tapes from both the sides, and now I'll just go ahead and glue the mechanism shut. And here I'm just checking if everything is working. And now I'll go ahead and die cut this another piece that goes on top of this mechanism and makes it look pretty. You can decorate this die cut as you want depending on how you want your scene to be. I'm gonna go ahead and use the thought bubble stencil here. Line it up in such a way that the scene that goes inside that rectangle will be completely inside the thought bubble. I use some post-it tape to hold my die cut and the stencil, and now I'm using Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink and inking up the thought bubble. Next, I'm also adding a little bit of Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink to the thought bubble. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on the card front. I have an A2 size white cardstock and I'm lining up my Grassy Stencil here, taping it down with some washi tape. Now I'm going to go ahead and ink up the grass using Cracked Pistachio and Lucky Clover Distress Oxide inks. I'm going to apply the Lucky Clover just to the tips of the grass. Next I'm going to bring my magic picture mechanism and place it where it's going to go on my card front. I want to make it flush with my scene. For that I'm going to go ahead and finish up that thought bubble. So here I'm using that magic picture mechanism as a guide to place my stencil. And once I know where that thought bubble will go, I'll go ahead and ink it up using Wilted Violet and Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide inks. And I'm not inking the whole thing here, just the left side of the thought bubble that's not on the magic picture mechanism. Next I'm gonna go ahead and create the sky. Here I'm masking the grass border first using the Grassy Stencil, taping it down with some post-it tape. Now I'm going to use a cloud stencil and ink up the sky using Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink. I'm using my makeup style blending brush that I got from Amazon to do all the inking today. I also went over the thought bubble while inking up the clouds. Next, I have to also make sure that the front of my magic picture mechanism is similar to my scene. Here I'm using a temporary tape to tape my front of the magic picture mechanism to my card front, making sure I line up the thought bubble. And here I'll create some clouds on the front of the magic picture mechanism, lining up the cloud stencil every time with the clouds already inked. And to make this process a little simple, I did not turn my cloud stencil the first time when I was creating the clouds. So here you can see the front of my magic picture mechanism matches completely with my card front. Just rubbing off the temporary tape here. Now I'll start putting things together. To glue this to the magic picture mechanism, you only apply tape to the corners diagonally and also to the shorter sides but not on the longer sides. And this die cut also has a little bit of notch cutout on the top side. It matches with the pull tab and helps line things up. Here I'm just finishing the thought bubble by inking up those dots. And here I'm just trimming my card front a 1/4 inch smaller, so later I can add some layers of cardstock behind it. To finish up my magic picture changer mechanism, here I'm going ahead and die cutting the pull tab out of purple and white cardstock. Using some liquid glue, I'll go ahead and glue that purple pull tab in place. Next I'll go ahead and glue the white arrow in the center for the recipient to know that it's a pull tab. Now I'll go ahead and glue this magic picture mechanism to my card front, making sure I line up the thought bubble. Next I'll go ahead and glue this card front to a black cardstock, which is slightly bigger, giving a black border all around. Next I'll go ahead and glue this onto a foam sheet, pop it up a little bit. I had this purple color fun foam in my stash that matched perfectly with this card project. Trimming off the excess foam sheet using my scissors. Now using some liquid glue, gluing this to a plaid pattern paper. Because we popped up our card front a little bit, it will be easier for the recipient to use the pull tab. If you do not want to pop it up, you don't have to use the fun foam. I just like that little bit of space you get to pull the pull tab. Here I'm seeing which critter I want to add to my scene to finish this scene. We have both the fox and the bunny image from Butterfly Kisses and On the Beach stamp sets, and I chose to go with the fox image from On the Beach stamp set. I used the jellyfish ink to stamp this image, and now I'm using the same Copic markers that I used to color the fox earlier to color this fox. I kept this coloring video even when I have showed you twice how to color a fox, because it's not the same image and it's not colored similarly, even though I'm using the same color combinations. And on top of that, I'm doing some no line coloring, so I wanted to show you how I colored all my images here today. And this is what I like about Lawn Fawn stamps. They have so many varieties of same critter, so it's easy for us to create scenes. I still have a little bit of coloring to show you here, so I'm going to add some music and then come back once I'm done coloring. Once done coloring, I went ahead and fuzzy cut my image. I did not use a die or my scan and cut here today because I wanted a very thin white line around my image. Here I'm gluing the fox with a little bit of foam tape and liquid glue just below that magic picture mechanism. Show as if he's laying down on the grass and thinking about hugging his friend. But here, after gluing the fox, I didn't feel like he was laying down on the grass. So here I stamped few grass image from the Butterfly Kisses stamp set using jellyfish ink and now coloring them using some YG markers. Once done coloring, I fussy cut them out and now gluing them using some foam tape. Here you will see that I'll remove these grasses because somehow I didn't like the look of it. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I moved on to stamping the sentiment first and later decide what I wanted to do about the grass. On the same purple cardstock that I used for the pull tab, I'm stamping the sentiment "I miss your hugs" from the Happy Hugs stamp set. I stamped the sentiment in clear ink and now I'm white heat embossing the sentiment. Once I heat set the sentiment, now it's time to glue it in place. I'm using my scissors to trim off the sentiment strip, cutting it on an angle on the left side and cutting it straight from the right side to make it flush with the card front. Adding a little bit of foam tape on the right side and glue towards the left and gluing it in place. Next, for the grass, I decided to die cut a grass border using the Lawn Fawn Grassy Border Die out of some lime green cardstock from my stash, and I inked the top of it using some Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink. And before gluing it in place, I'm trimming off the excess grass border and now applying some double-sided foam tape, removing the backing and gluing it in place. I like the look of this much better than the previous one. And here I'm almost done with my card design, but I felt that something was still missing. I wanted to add a little bit of pop of color to my scene. So here I stamped a few butterflies from the Butterfly Kisses stamp set using jellyfish ink, and now I'm coloring them using my Copic markers. Again, all the colors used are listed on the screen below. I wanted to add some red color to this scene and I thought red butterflies would be just perfect. I also colored one butterfly yellow because I didn't want all of them red. Once done coloring, I fussy cut my butterflies and now I'm gluing them in place using some liquid glue. I used the rule of 3 here when I was gluing my butterflies because I wasn't sure how many butterflies I should add. I wanted to add more, but then I thought it might distract us from the main scene. Here I'm gluing my card front to an A2 size white card base. For the inside of the card, I stamped the sentiment "I can't wait to hug you" and glued a left out butterfly that I colored earlier. So this is my card project for today, featuring the new Lawn Fawn stamp sets along with the Magic Picture Changer die. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I upload new videos every week. Here are a few more videos that you might like to watch. Thank you for visiting. Have a nice day.